Hello and welcome to this coffee clash. I am just going to be awkwardly talking to the camera here unless you chat with me, so please interact in some way. Ask any questions that you would like. I am happy to have you here with me. Hey James, good to see you. It's been a long time. Super sad I cannot make it to JordanCon this year. So what would you like to hear from me? I am pretty open to anything. Something that you probably haven't seen is this is the hardback edition. I was lucky enough to be offered into the beta program for Amazon, so I got that. And doing the layout, oh, that looks terrible on camera. Getting the cover layout was a super big challenge, but it was awesome to get that. All right, so questions, come at me. Hey, Steve. How's everyone doing today? Yeah, okay. This is so awkward. What is the beta program? You mean as a beta reader? The beta program for Amazon, yes. So they have started doing a hardback offering. So when you publish through Amazon, they have a arm called KDP Print, and previously we just had access to paperback versions, which you've probably seen at some point. That was formerly CreateSpace, but recently they began offering hardbacks as well. So if you've seen indie authors with that, they are now able to get their books with the wraparound. And I think they're looking to maybe expand into some other types of print offerings as well in the future, but I don't have any details about that. But right now, the hardback offering with the printed on there, so there's no jacket. I don't know why it's coming up so weird. I don't know if it's showing like that. They're very strange video. I swear it's not some weird interdimensional portal inside the book. It's just some weird video thing that's going on there. But so it's kind of cool to see it in that format because that's not something I ever had access to before. The cover art for this one was actually done by Robert. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of his last name. I apologize in advance. Rezik. I'm sorry, that's terrible. He's Polish, and there are C's and Z's next to each other, and my American tongue is not accustomed to that. But anyway, I got to meet Robert in person. Actually, when we were living in England, we took a brief trip over to Warsaw, Poland, and he lives there and was a very, very kind and generous tour guide with his wife, and they took us out to the party barges at night and to some really wonderful restaurants. He's just a super cool guy, and it was a lot of fun to hang out with him. So I'm very proud to have his cover art on these books. But I do a lot of my other cover art. So all of the Catechol collaboration novels were things that I have done myself. In terms of what I am working on right now, I am about midway through book 2 in the Terran Empire saga, Empire Uprising. And I wanted to be further on that, but unfortunately SFFCon has kind of taken over my life for the last month. So it's been a challenge to get good concentrated writing time. But as soon as this convention is over, I'm going to sit down and commit to getting that book done as soon as possible. And I'm doing a writer's retreat with a couple of friends in Lake Tahoe in a couple of weeks, and I'm planning to just spend that time doing a lot of writing and get this ready for you. And I like to spend a lot of good concentrated time on these books and make sure all of the plot threads are woven together in a good way. And I don't want to rush it, but it's dragging on longer than I want to. And I know you have been very patient in waiting, and I want to make sure that you get it in a timely fashion. Designed the background picture with the Catholic end this year. Yes, I did. That is just using some stock rendered art stuff and cobbled it together. I hope to continue doing the art for at least some of the SFFCons, but I think it would be super cool to have some guest artists come on eventually and do art for us to have as a feature. And so if anyone is watching this and is an artist and would be potentially interested in having some official SFFCon branding art background that you could then sell on your own profile, then we'd definitely be open to that. All right, other questions? Not all at once. I am so awkward when I am just on my own here. Give me a topic, someone. No? Let's see. Do you want me to do a reading out of the book? I could do that. Oh, any updates on the TV show? We have been a finalist in a few different film festivals, so there's been some good visibility and feedback on it. We recently went through the script and did a re-edit of it. It was sitting at 67 pages. We've reduced it to 60, which is a little bit more of a standard pilot length episode. So we're hoping that that edit will make it a little more appealing. We also took out one of the big CG opening things, which would up the budget by quite a bit. So so we're doing some things to repackage it and get it ready. We have definitely had interest in it. No offers as yet, but we're very encouraged by the feedback that we've gotten so far and are still cautiously optimistic that it's going to land in a good place. What inspires me? I take inspiration from pretty much anything. I watch a lot of shows on the streaming networks and will take little bits of those things. Something that you might not know about me is I actually really like the crime drama stuff. That's probably the biggest genre that I watch outside of the sci-fi and fantasy stuff. So I think I'll probably end up doing a thriller at some point. And James Fox and I have actually been kicking around an idea for a terrestrial kind of techno thriller movie that we might write and produce locally. So that could be super fun. In terms of the writing stuff, I have started out very early on as a sci-fi and fantasy fan and consumed a lot of things. So if you want to go back to the absolute roots of the Cataclysm universe, you could pull from the Darkest Rising sequence by Susan Cooper, the show Sliders from the 90s, which I'm actually now rewatching with my husband because he's never seen it before, and he is now loving the campy 90s-ness of it, and it's pretty fantastic to rewatch. And definitely Dune and Ender's Game are really big things for me early on. And I think there's a little bit of the X-Files in there, probably in an unexpected way that I won't go into. So what's the dream landing spot for the Cataclysm universe adaptation? Ooh, that is a really tough one. I would I think my preference would be to see it on a streaming network for the main reason that you're not constricted to a specific runtime for each episode. Like when you have something airing on a normal broadcast TV, it's like that about 42-minute mark, and you can't deviate from that because of the commercial breaks. Now, something like HBO or Showtime would be okay as well because they tend to be a little more flexible with their timing, but streaming seems to be kind of where it's at now with accessibility. So I've been liking a lot of the stuff that Paramount Plus is putting out. Hulu has some really great things too. I mean, Netflix, of course, or Amazon would be amazing. So I don't really have a strong preference for which platform. Just the main thing is finding a network that believes in the property as it exists and likes the themes and doesn't want to fundamentally change the core of it. I've been very flexible as we're doing the adaptation with some of the timeline changes and little like adding new characters or changing little details about locations, but I definitely want to make sure that the core of the story is intact and the characters ring true to how they are in the books, because I think that's what people have loved about the books, and I would be very sad to see that element lost. Let's see, other questions here. Do I have a background in science physics? My science is good. Thank you. I'm faking it very well. I certainly like science, and I've watched a lot of nonfiction stuff. Any of those shows, exploring the universe kind of things. But it's more of a hobby than anything I've really focused on. I owe a lot of the science aspect of things to my amazing beta reader team. They call me on stuff. Jim Dean in particular has been a fantastic supporter of my writing and was very integral to the Dark Stars trilogy especially, and making sure that the multidimensional element of that series worked well. And the tech in the Catacomb universe has been a wonderful collaboration between myself and my co-authors. James Fox has been really wonderful as well with brainstorming a lot of things, as well as MD Cooper giving some great ideas as I started to try to put some terminology to things. I was like, hey, well, so the tech works like this, but I don't really know what you would call that. So I'm very thankful to them for jumping in and helping me put words to some of those things. But yeah, so in summary, I love the science stuff, but I'm not a scientist. I have a degree in psychology, so when it comes to the interpersonal dynamic aspect of it, that's much more where I have a formal education. Yes, Sliders is amazing. That was my first fandom, I must say. I was, I think, around 4th grade when I really got into it, and it was airing. And so for those of you who know the Catacomb universe very well, you may be interested to hear, and I've said this before, that the characters of Chris and Kate were originally Quinn and Wade back in a very, very, very early iteration of this that was sort of fanfic that very quickly devolved into something completely different, or evolved, I should say, not devolved, because I think it did go beyond. Is there a character based on my husband? No, not really. I think if I were to cast him as anyone, it would probably be Scott, Chris's friend, just because he's a very outgoing, charismatic kind of guy. But I had that character well before I met Nick. But I do credit Nick to being the one to actually push me to finish the series and publish it. And he has been my biggest supporter over the years, and I'm so thankful. I had written the original books back so Veil of Reality was the first one that I wrote, and I wrote that all through middle and high school. And then pretty much all through college, it just sat on a shelf. And I met Nick when I was 25, and I told him about this novel project that I had started years ago. And he said, hey, you should really finish that. And so I started writing again. So you have him to thank for all of this even being here. I was watching YouTube in order to comment there. You can come on YouTube, but you have to log in. That's so. We didn't realize that you needed to be signed into YouTube in order to interact with it when we set up the convention. So we have now changed the stream for the rest of the SFFCon programming to stream both to Facebook or YouTube. So you can use whatever platform you're most comfortable with and be able to interact that way. Why did you pick an empire or hegemony as the form of government in Catacol? So I don't even remember exactly how I settled on the governance idea. That was just sort of one of those things that evolved over time. I think Dune was probably a big influence of having these big families that were ruling a certain area. And as I consumed various sci-fi media, I was attracted to that idea that at a certain point, a government or a corporate entity has a very high degree of control in the government, and that a natural extension of that would probably be for those corporations to eventually be the governing powers themselves. So that's sort of where the idea of the dynasties came in, that each of them had these big cornerstone elements of the foundational structure in the empire, and that they would have to work together to a degree, but each of them would also be looking at their own business interests. But that is not necessarily a great way. So I don't want to have too many spoilers for the ending of the original series if you haven't read it yet, but I was looking at adding a little bit more of a democratic approach, but also acknowledging that those main infrastructure elements are very key and you can't just get rid of them in a name. So I am not advocating for anything there as being the way to have a government, but just in the big galactic society, it just seemed like a reasonable way to have things structured. Which combine crime and sci-fi, like the old Alienation. I am not familiar with that particular work. One of the things that I've thought about doing is potentially having just like setting something on a space station. So it would be a sci-fi setting, but with very much a normal crime thriller kind of feel to it. But just from a budgeting perspective, we're looking to create some properties that would be more earthbound, just because you don't need to have all of the CG stuff for spaceships in space and special effects that are costly. So if we can just have some really cool stories that are done in a lower tech way, I think it would be a lot of fun. But in the future, I mean, we'll see. I definitely want to build out the Catacol universe more, but also probably do some other things just to show that I'm not a one-trick pony with that, so to say. So any plans to hop genres or do something non-sci-fi? So yeah, related to that, I've also been toying around with the idea of maybe doing a romance novel at some point. I definitely like my romantic subthreads, so there's no reason that I can't do a rom-com book at some point. I would definitely do that under a pen name, though. I don't even know if I would tell anyone if I actually do that in terms of existing readership. But yeah, I mean, I love stories of all different genres, and I would be happy to explore that. I think it's a great exercise as a writer and creator of any sort to try things that are outside of your normal realm, because you learn something from all of that, which is one of the reasons that I enjoy watching things that aren't just sci-fi fantasy shows. I want to push myself and my thinking into other areas as well. Yes, thank you, Nick. Sorry, I'm behind going through the comments here. We're Pesta another similar character. So Pesta's one of a kind in a lot of ways, but I will say that Pesta is going to come into play in other series. Her story in Shadowed Space is not complete by any stretch, so you'll be seeing a lot more of that character, and I I could see maybe others of her kind being created in the future. We don't have any specific plans for that quite yet, but we'll see how the story evolves. So the way that I work as a writer is I have a lot of very clear plot points that I want to hit, but I like to leave myself open to other things as I am going through the story. So I will lay seeds for things that I know I'm going to use, and I will fit those pieces together as I actually get to that point based on everything else that's been going on. So like I said, I'm continuously learning and absorbing things, and I never want to close myself off to incorporating a good idea. So though I do have things plotted out, especially when it comes to subplots, I will often add in new things and create new layers as I'm working through things. So I think the Pesta storyline and that exploration with the tech surrounding the Erebus is going to be one of those areas where we will grow, and I'll work with my collaborators and we'll come up with some super cool stuff to bring you. Have I thought about doing a prequel with Kate and Chris before Will was born? A favorite dynamic between those two? Yes, that is very much something that I have thought about doing, especially and going into Will's early years. I think there's a ton of development content that could be done there. I would love to hear from you, the readers, about what specific time period you would be most interested in, and what elements within that. I mean, we could have everything from like a novella with like Chris and Kate's wedding and dealing with the interactions with their family of like them being in the TSS and not being really happy about it, but like, yay, we're getting these two dynasties together, so that's great. And so it could be something like that, or it could be a whole book about like Will starting as a trainee in the TSS as an 11-year-old, whenever, or 12, and whenever and else is much older. So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to write the kind of stories that you want to read. So if you have ideas for something that you want to see, please let me know. Right now, my main focus is going to be to finish up the Terran Empire saga. I have 5 books planned for that. I could certainly extend it beyond if that's a series you want me to continue. But in terms of the arc that I have planned for the current threat, we'll say that's what I have mapped out. And beyond that, we could go prequel, we could go sideways to something else entirely. So yeah, just let us know what you would like to see. We also have plans for going way back in time to the priesthood back before the Aesir split from them, and I'm quite excited about the potential for that series and kind of the origin of the Baxen and that whole era. Any more stories with Kira planned? So she is going to be a character in the Terran Empire saga. She was introduced at the end of Empire Reborn. Sorry, minor spoilers if you haven't gotten there yet. And she will continue to be a character throughout that series, I expect. I would love to do more books with her as another spin-off potential. She's a lot of fun to write, and I like her a lot. So that's certainly one of the more sideways paths that we could do in the future, if that's what you want to see. To keep a fixed writing schedule, or is it when inspiration hits? It more recently has been when inspiration hits. I've always been more of a night owl person when it comes to the creative energy, but the frustrating thing is that I like to write at night, but if I don't write when I first get up in the morning, then I'm not going to have a productive day. So what I really need to do is kind of do a split day, get up, get a little bit of writing done, take care of all my other stuff, and then go back to writing in the evening. I have not been good about keeping a set schedule, but I was so much better when I was doing that. So as soon as this convention is over, I am planning to make a concerted effort to get back to a good writing schedule and get my word count up every day and start getting books out to you guys. And just the last couple of years have been extremely disruptive with multiple international moves and then the pandemic happening and not really knowing where we're going to be living. But now that we are settled somewhere and in a good spot, I feel like I'm finally back in a mental space where I can get back to a good level of production. And because I want to get stuff to you guys, you're such good readers and so supportive, and I'm incredibly thankful for you being patient with me through all of this. Am I planning on any audio for Terran Empire Saga? I would absolutely love to have these as audiobooks. I approached Podium Publishing, who did the original Cataclysm series, and they passed on it. I'll probably reach out to Tantor at some point, but if they don't take it, then there is the possibility of self-funding it. The problem with doing audio yourself is you can either do a royalty split with narrators, but it's a big gamble for the narrator because they're putting in all of this time, and if the book doesn't sell well in audio, then they don't really get paid for it. And I don't want to do that to another creator. So the other opportunity is for me to just pay for it myself and pay them an hourly rate, but the hourly rates are somewhere in the vicinity of $300 per finished hour, which is a lot. And I also don't really want to take that risk. So one of the other options would be to crowdfund a audiobook where I would select a narrator and we would launch a campaign on Kickstarter or one of the other platforms like that. And if enough people pre-order the audiobook, then we could just fund it that way and it would be a win for everyone. So I'm going to explore doing that for some of the audiobooks in the future, because I'd love to have the Verity Chronicles and Shadowed Space in audio as well. So that's not a right now thing that I'm going to tackle, but probably within the year, I'm going to explore the different options and see what we can do. Because I know that a lot of people do love the audio format, and it'd be nice to have that offering for you. Have I ever had ideas come to me during writing that totally details your planned plot? Yeah, it's so weird how the ideas can come sometimes. I tend to have my best, like, oh, things are coming together moments either right before going to sleep or right when waking up in the morning or in the shower. And I know that the shower ideas are across the board. Everyone knows that, regardless of what field you work in, that just like there's something about that just quiet white noise that just seems to be good for having that creative energy flow. So yeah, I often find that I'll just be laying in bed, casually thinking about something, and then just all of the pieces will come together in one amazing synergistic ball, and it's great. And I think I've had one of those for the second book in the Terran Empire saga that just kind of really brings everything full circle in a super cool way that I wasn't fully expecting, but I think it's going to be pretty cool. What's my favorite part of the universe that I've created? Ooh. Well, this is a really, really tiny niche thing, and it's very, I wouldn't say it's my favorite part, but the part that I would absolutely want to go visit is the resort world where Will and Sarah get to go on their honeymoon in Alusha. I would absolutely love to go to that place, as I have it envisioned in my head. I don't talk about it in the book, but it's basically just a world that's entirely like going to the Caribbean, except no insects. We're just like white sand beaches everywhere. You have your own private island and like fully automated staff that'll just take care of everything for you. So that sounds like a super amazing spot to go. But in terms of my favorite part of the universe is a little bit more of an intangible thing, but just the idea of having these extra sensory abilities that go beyond our current experience as humans here on Earth, and just that being able to manipulate cosmic energies with your mind just is a super cool thing. And I know that's not original to the Catacomb universe at all, but I just really love that as a concept and an idea. And a lot of the more metaphysical elements of the universe and like the astral projection and everything are sort of my like, wouldn't that be super cool if that's actually how things were? How am I liking California? Do I think it might be my permanent home? I absolutely love where we are right now, mostly because of the people that we're surrounded by. And it's just like this extended family that we've found here that's been really amazing. So I don't know that I would stay in this particular spot forever, but I would, my dream is to have different places around the world that I could go for little bits of time. So this would be one of those landing spots where we could be for a few months out of the year. Like April to May is absolutely lovely here, but in the middle of July and August, it's over 110 some days, and that's not as great. So being able to travel around to a few different spots would be absolutely wonderful. But I would love to be able to be here for at least part of the year. What have found to be the audience for the Catacomb universe? Is it different from what I expected, or has it changed as the series progressed? I actually don't know who my audience is on the whole, which is really bad from a business perspective as a writer. The only people I know who my audience are those who interact with me, but the number of people who communicate with me directly does not nearly begin to account for my readership as a whole, and I have no idea if it is a representative sample or not. So I think one of the things that has surprised me in a lot of ways is that a bunch of older men have loved this series as much as they have, because that is obviously not me. But I think the reason for that is because I was inspired by a lot of the sci-fi classics from that older, like 1940s to 1960s era. And that's what that demographic grew up reading. So I think that we just have a love of those same tropes and ideas. But that's not who I was really expecting to be writing for. I would love to have more young women come and be enjoying this sci-fi. I think it's, I write the kind of sci-fi that's much more based on family dynamics rather than like the hardcore science stuff. So it's accessible from a characterization standpoint. So yeah, I write for just people who love the big epic sci-fi thing. I don't really have a specific reader in mind, which probably hurts me from an income standpoint, because those who really target to a specific reader have much more financial success. But I write what I love, and I'm so happy to have other people that love the same things that I do. So all of these books are just like bringing together my favorite things and all of those elements into one package. And that's just always what's driven me. And so the fact that anyone else enjoys this weird brain soup that I have in my head is super cool to me. Do I think a TV series will be a completely different audience? I think there is a high possibility that it would be. The way that we've written the pilot script is to be a little bit more of a YA appeal. And so I don't want it to just be a YA audience, though. And what I always have to remind myself is that having the young adult appeal, there are a lot of adults who are much older who also enjoy that. It's more about the themes that are being explored. And if you go back to those early Catacomb books, it is very much a coming of age story in a lot of ways. So that's where the YA appeal comes in, with Will and Sarah being younger. But we've tried to write and structure the series in a way that though the characters are going to be a little bit younger, it's going to have a lot of adult stuff going on in it too. So it's hitting that we'll say like 15 and up age range as an audience, and that it should be appealing to all of those people, regardless of their age, and just tackle some of the really big themes, but also have some of the coming of age stuff in there that seems to have the perennial appeal. Older demographic makes sense is the Esper aspect of first million. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and Liz, thank you so much for being a wonderful beta reader for me all these years. Everyone who's watching, you have a lot to attribute Liz to for being one of my harsher beta readers on some of these things and calling me on when I was being lazy with certain aspects of it. So much of the book writing process for me is I'll get out a draft, I'm decently happy with it, I have these things kind of nagging me in the back of my head, I could probably do that better, but I'll just see what the beta readers think. And Liz is always one of the people who's like, that's not quite right. And so I'll go back and fix stuff. So I am very appreciative to all of the beta readers for keeping me honest and pushing me to be my best. All right, any other questions? Thank you all very much for being here with me. Let me just check the Facebook to make sure that there wasn't anything over there. Okay, I think we're good. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you got some good stuff out of this. I try to be very accessible, so feel free to message me whenever you want, and I will try to respond in a timely fashion. So thank you so much for being here and for all of your support of my career over the years. It means so much to me to have such fantastic readers who are engaged and smart and love all the stuff that I do. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the convention. See ya.